Many years ago, I heard a speaker, probably online, talking about how, there are a lot of people out there who claim to be consultants. And he somewhat ridiculed a lot of the people who, put consultant on their resume and, was kind of saying that, making kind of a joke out of it, especially when there were people in their 20s who are just getting started in their careers talking about being consultants. He says because, as a consultant, it's like, what experience do you really have to consult in business and things like that? And he admitted that, it's possible that, somebody goes to school, they get an MBA, so they have the education technically to, and the training technically to consult in business because that's what they went to school for. But he says, basically his whole spiel was that it's kind of ridiculous to claim to be a consultant at that age because you really don't have the kind of experience that's required to effectively in any significant way help a business as an external consultant that's been contracted. So what I got from that is really interesting though, because in my life now I'm experiencing something similar, but as someone who's matured and has been consistently practicing for many years now. And in a way, I don't know if I totally agree with him, but maybe what I'm going to say does align with what he was saying. And it's basically because I've been practicing martial arts for almost 40 years. And I remember I started capoeira specifically when I was about 15, and I'm 48 now, so that's 33 years ago. But it was when I just had turned 15, so it was in 1992, so it was, technically almost 34 years ago. But I'd been practicing martial arts before that, I never really settled on a style because I had been learning a lot about Bruce Lee and stuff from his books. I'd been a reader for a long time, and I had already read about Miyamoto Musashi and how he basically developed his own sword fighting style, and Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do was his own style that was really, there was something called Circle of Iron. I think it was a movie that the quote was, when somebody asked him, "What's your style?" He says, "No style." It's like, "What's your form?" "No form," something like that. And I really adopted that and realized, from that kind of wisdom that basically in martial arts, which developed in wartime, and martial means of or pertaining to war, right? So, anything goes. And I even learned later from practicing capoeira from the Brazilians, they have a term called vale tudo, which means anything goes. And, at that time, the Ultimate Fighting Championship was becoming very popular. And so, terms like NHB or no holds barred were going around, right? And bare knuckle boxing and rope fist fighting from Thailand and things like that, where the rules were much looser than they are now. Like, for example, it was completely different from the boxing and wrestling. Like, I grew up watching Mike Tyson box, and there were a lot of rules. And I also became a really heavy puncher when I did my amateur tough man MMA competition. I was basically a knockout artist. I was that person. I fought like Mike Tyson. Now, I didn't steal his style, but basically I tended to map myself off of Mike Tyson. And one of my favorite games was that Nintendo game, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and also the character Balrog from Street Fighter was also very interesting to me because of just his power punching and how he was using boxing to basically fight, martial artists. And I would play the game to see how well he could do against people who were basically kicking and had different reach from him and all that stuff like that. So, but now my point is that I had been practicing martial arts before my introduction to capoeira, and what I had learned recently from when I opened up talking about hearing this person talk about how 20-year-old consultants don't have any experience to impart upon seasoned business professionals, for example. I realized that, as I was alluding to earlier, that may in some ways be true, especially in martial arts. I even, years ago, when I was 27, so 21 years ago, there was this group online. I think they still exist. Maybe they still have the website, called Bullshido. And their whole thing was talking about exposing the scams and frauds in martial arts. And they sent a little attention my way because I had gone online and talked about being the grandmaster of my own martial art and wanting to start recruiting people to train them in order for them to have the experience so they can start their own training system and start teaching people and earn money from it. Because by that time, I had already been making between $25 and $100 an hour teaching martial arts, basically teaching healthy living and self-defense in California. I started out in 1998, actually, I started teaching capoeira to students on the intramural fields of University of Miami because I had a girlfriend who went there, so I was on the campus all the time. Between that and doing gigs in film and TV, working in the art department doing props and special effects. And so I was constantly there, and so I would teach people, and I just kept on going. I got my first personal trainer certification in 1999 from a company that's no longer around. It was called IFA, the International Fitness Association, I believe. I think there's another IFA now. I'm not sure if it's associated or not, but I looked into it just because, I was kind of reminiscing, being nostalgic one day, and just thought about it. And so I had been teaching since then, so I had already got the teaching bug. I knew that I could earn money from it and lead groups, and I knew that I was an effective teacher, that I could transmit knowledge effectively and do it really simply, at least in martial arts. Now, when I write, that's a completely different story. Sometimes people have told me that my writing is inaccessible, at least lately as well. I don't know if it's just because of my self-education and because I'm so steeped in, I just really love physics and the language of science, because it's in Greek and Latin and just the words that are used. English is my first language, but I also speak Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese and now Mandarin since I lived in China for 5 years. And just something about learning about languages and how they work is just fascinating to me. And so, but I learned that I can teach really effectively even back then. But I've gotten significantly better over the years at doing so. And I'm making this transition back into focusing solely on healthy living and self-defense as my career at this stage, because I'm so good at it. Not only am I good at it as a teacher, but I'm still effectively moving. It's interesting to be this vindicated feeling of having established the idea. Back in 2006, I graduated from the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. I received my degree in clinical hypnosis. They're America's first nationally accredited college of hypnosis. And even then I realized the parallels between fitness training and clinical hypnosis, and basically they follow along a lot of the same lines. I actually started working at a gym just a little bit before I enrolled at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. In November 2004, I started there, and I think it was just a little bit earlier, maybe February, it could have been as early as February of 2004, that I had started working at a gym called Bodies in Motion. And very quickly there I started teaching kickboxing, boxing, yoga, mat Pilates, boot camp classes, formats called firm fusion, kids karate. I even had the opportunity to teach David Carradine's granddaughters in one of the classes, and which was fun just because I was, working in film and TV as well, and you meet a lot of actors and other celebrities going through there. I mean, even there was a guy named Rene Cabrera who let me train. He was training with Jose Canseco before he did his MMA debut, which I don't know if it went really well at all. There are a lot of people that went through that gym, and you got to be up close and personal with them and even talk to them. They were really friendly. David Hasselhoff, Bill Bellamy, Dominic Purcell, the girl who played Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I can't remember her name is. Michael Clark Duncan was there. She wasn't a member of the gym, but I met her walking through the back behind the gym. Paul Abdul. I mean, so there were a lot of, even a guy named Vincent Calloway, who was a member of the band that was really famous back in the day, the Callaways, and was part of Midnight Star. He actually worked with me, and he taught martial arts there. He was had several black belts, and so he taught martial arts, and he was a personal trainer there. It was fascinating, and so yeah, just it was an interesting place. Just to a lot of people you came across there, but so. At the same time at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, so in 2006 when I graduated, I established already, and then I just went online with it, was my concept of hypno-athletics. HYPNOATHLETICS. And when I write it, I stylize it with a capital H, and then, lowercase YPNO, and then no space, then a capital A, lowercase THLETICS. And so hypno-athletics, and my tagline was exercising your mind. And so that went online in 2006, and it's still online. So that website's been online for 20 years now. And so I already had this concept of that, there's a mind-body fusion, and they're really not separate, and you can really, influence one through the other. And I even had learned of a concept. There was a book, I think, called Physical Control of the Mind. And I realized that just as much as the mind can control behavior of the body has a lot of control over the mind. Like things like hunger and sexual urges and drug addiction, right? These things have a feedback loop. And so, and then a year later, when I kept on developing the concept of hypno-athletics, I went online with the website because I thought I should capture that idea of exercising your mind. Since hypno-athletics is exercising your mind, then I went online with exercisingyourmind.com in 2007. And so then, at that time, I came up with the understanding that the tagline on exercisingyourmind.com was wealth attraction research. I'm very much into acronyms. It's something that I'm kind of addicted to myself. I have an acronym obsession. And so wealth attraction research spelled WAR. And it all had to do with, martial arts. Everything has an undertone of martial arts in everything that I do. And so it was wealth attraction research, WAR. Great health is the truest of all wealth. And this is the vindication that I have been talking about and getting to, is that now at 48 years old, I'm still doing backflips. I have the endurance to go and do an intense 5 rounds of kickboxing that are 5 minutes long each, with 1 minute break in between, because I map it as if I'm training to fight a championship MMA fight, which that's the length of it, 5 rounds that are 5 minutes long each with a 1 minute break in between. And I'm still doing all of these movements, kicking, flipping, jumping, running, climbing, squatting, crawling, rolling, cartwheeling, doing all this stuff. And and I haven't slowed down. Like, I'm still moving like I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And my body is matching that with the way that I eat as well. I mean, I'm what people would say I'm ripped. I have an 8-pack, literally. It's ridiculous. I'm mobile, thin, but I'm very muscular, not like a bodybuilder style. I'm about 185 pounds, and so I'm not small. I'm not like the biggest person either, and it's fine because I don't go to lift weights a lot. And it's every couple of months I might do some weightlifting here and there, but I usually just go to the gym to do capoeira movements or hit the heavy bag doing, kickboxing, or my hybrid of capoeira, which I call capoeira, Kappaguerra, the only war to wages within, capoeira, and also stylized with a capital K, lowercase a, PPA, capital G, no space, lowercase UERRA, capoeira, the only war to wages within. And it's at this point that I've gotten to where I'm still able to do all these things, and my nutrition is dialed in, and I've realized that for all this time I've been doing the right thing. So now I'm at this point where I've been validated, vindicated through my own body, through my own practice, through my approach, through the way that people talk to me. There are kids who are in their 20s who come up to me. Two different guys twice said the same thing to me, and I thought it was very interesting. They said, "How can I get like you?" Other people in their early 20s say things like, "I can't do any of that stuff." The other day, a young lady asked me how old I was, and I said 48, and her face, she just looked astonished and said that I look like I'm very well taken care of. And I'm constantly getting comments about, guys say, "Oh man, you got the muscles," and this and that, and girls are checking me out and saying stuff like that, like, "You're a beautiful man." And it's so all around the board. The reason I'm saying that stuff is because these are the things that people are striving for, aspiring to in their life. They want to be fit, they want to be muscular, they want to be able to do things. Mostly people are chasing the aesthetics. They don't realize the hard work that I do, but it's actually a lot of fun to me. But it's something that, it is seen to be as valuable, and it's like all across the board. Young men want to be able to defend themselves. They want to be tough. They want to be, strong and fit, but they also want to be able to impress the girls. So they want to have the body. And women, they look at those kind of things. Attractiveness is a big part of attractiveness in the dating scene, and also having a high level of skill, being competent in something, having expertise, mastery, having leadership skills, these things like that. And a lot of this is confirmed. There's a gentleman, I've been watching his videos a lot lately, called Dr. Orion Taraban, who's a psychologist. He's a PsyD, and his channel is called Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And just a little side note, I noticed what's very interesting about that is whenever I publish something or make a podcast that gets, broadcast at a lot of different places, all of a sudden my algorithm starts getting flooded with things that are related to it. And I'm starting to realize that, more and more, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything is really derivative, especially stuff that I do, I'll admit. I'm an individual, and I've created a lot of things that are uniquely my own, but the underlying truth of a lot of them resonate with a lot of other people. And that's how I found Dr. Orion Taraban, is that I must have published something, and I just noticed a trend, that I published something, and then I started getting these recommendations to watch things that pop up on my feed that directly correlate with something I just published. And on another metaphysical note, what's interesting about that is that's been happening all my life. When I come up with an idea or write something down or really establish something or break through to another path in my life, all of a sudden I start seeing it everywhere. But I'm pretty sure it's more psychological and neurological, and probably has something to do with my reticular activating system. But that's another story for another day, and also something I've talked a lot about before. So what I'm really talking about here is that I'm at this point now where I've got validation of my methods and techniques, and the wisdom that I've developed over the years, that it's effective because it has the result that people are looking for. I'm I don't just look good on the surface. The things that people are talking to me about, you're really vascular, you're ripped, you got the abs, you got the muscles, how can I get like you? How do you move like that? How do you do that? Blah, blah, blah. What? You're 48? Because people are constantly asking my age. And because I think they can tell when they look at me, I'm not like a young looking guy, but they look at me and they look at my skin. My skin is really clean and smooth. I don't have a bunch of wrinkles, and, I don't have like flabby skin, and I'm, and the muscular and all this other stuff like that. But I do have gray hairs, a lot of gray hair. So now that I'm really clean shaven and I'm not wearing my glasses anymore and I've been wearing contacts, a lot of people are also really just taken aback, which is funny because I don't really pay that much attention to my appearance in that way. But I started doing it more lately just because I've noticed the different kind of attention that I've been getting, and it's helpful in this attention economy now, especially that I'm building back up my business focused on the healthy living and self-defense aspect, which I'm getting at because I have to be my own walking billboard. And again, the validation of my methods and techniques and training is, it's drawing people in. And going back to what I started off originally, I'm realizing some of the insight that is true about what that gentleman was saying all those years ago about, when you're in your 20s, what do you really have to consult about, when you're so young? There's, you don't have really any kind of, insight to give to these seasoned business professionals. But now here I am at this point where I have 30 years under my belt, and it's pretty much, inarguable, irrefutable that it's because I've been doing this for so long that you can't really contest that I know what I'm doing, especially when the results are evident. I mean, the fact that I can do flashy looking things and do, and I'm not a trickster in the sense of, I don't know if that's what they call them, but the people who do tricks, TRIX, who, there's these guys who do some amazing things with their bodies. A lot of these incredible, like 720-degree spins and double backflips and just amazing stuff that they can do with their bodies. I mean, I don't do all of that stuff. But there's some basic stuff I can do, cartwheels, aerials, barrel rolls, 540 spins, backflips, back handsprings, and different variations of those, tornado kicks, all, some pretty flashy looking stuff. I'm really flexible, so I can kick really high. I can jump really high. So all of that flashy surface stuff, people see that. They also see my physical body and just the fact that I'm able to transmit it really easily. So the proof is there. It's irrefutable, not just in the time that I've put in, but just the results that I get. And so there's a point to that in some ways, of just having that experience of continuing to do something for so long and not stop. And, it's martial arts, but I've also just continued composing and performing and recording music, as well as studying metaphysics, science, philosophy, and spirituality. And so I have all of these things under my belt, and they really are all part of my one system of healthy living and self-defense. And that definitely includes music and metaphysics, because capoeira encompasses all those things. It's a dance, it's a game, and it's a martial art. And when I came across that system, it's been one of the most stabilizing concepts and ideas and art forms that I've ever come across. And that's why I still base the movements and things that I do on it till this very day, because it's been something that's been very grounding for me. And so now having, over 30 years of experience training in martial arts, I definitely, there's also a sense of increased confidence. It's an effortless confidence that comes with it, because I've been operating at such a high level for all this time. And it's basically been the same level. I mean, there are increases in understanding how I can be more efficient and and in things that I know better about resting and sleeping and nutrition and things like that. But basically, I'm doing the same moves, the same speed, and a lot of the same combinations. I pick up a few things here and there because, the internet, there's a lot of videos to learn from. But the main difference is that I'm just able to do things more efficiently, and I'm able to transmit the knowledge more effectively and with a lot less effort. There's a lot less friction. And so one of the encouragement here is that, especially for younger people, younger guys, young men, even if you don't do something for a living, like I kind of went in and out of doing it for a while and kind of lost my way of teaching healthy living and self-defense, and got caught up in a lot of bright, shiny objects, and even had this idea that maybe it wasn't for me to do certain things. Maybe it wasn't realistic to be a martial artist. I don't know how I got these weird ideas in my head, but I kept on practicing no matter what. Every single day I would hit the heavy bag or do capoeira moves and stretch and breathe and do yoga poses and meditate, and I just kept in the studying and playing music. So I just kept it with me all the time and never stopped because I have an obsession with it, and that's one thing. But the wisdom here is that when you remain doing something consistently over time, you may realize that it is really your guiding light, as I am more, as I have firmly established now that it's not only something that I have an obsession with, but, years ago, I codified, I put these things together, or curated these ideas together that I used to hear my mother say all the time, and I never really quite understood them, but I know the truth of them now. And things that she would say, would be, everything happens for a reason. And a lot of things have happened in my life, and some things, you wouldn't know the reason why, but over time you start to realize, there was a reason for that. I'm still here, and I have this knowledge and understanding, and I've developed as a person because of it. And so maybe that was the reason for me to learn these things, or just to have that experience as a human. The other thing was, there's always room for improvement. And so I'm somewhat addicted to that, not in a hustle culture way, but I'm always doing my best to find some way to continue to improve myself, even if it's just by researching and learning something new about something. So I continue to do that by researching in various different ways, by listening, watching, reading, and practicing. And the third one was, do what you love and the money will follow. And I'm going to focus on that one in a minute. And my favorite one, which I live by, is what do you mean can't? And it reminds me of, from Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where he talks about, if you make a statement, I can't afford something, it stops your mind from thinking because you just made a statement and there's a period at the end of that. But he says, if you ask the question, how can I afford this? Then it starts you on the path of thinking of various different ways of how you can do something. But going back to the idea of do what you love and the money will follow is probably really ultimately how I can describe my path through martial arts, ultimately culminating in me focusing on the aspect of healthy living and self-defense, which even all those years ago when I founded Hypno-Athletics, the full tagline came out to be, Hypno-Athletics is exercising your mind towards universal harmony and spiritual wisdom through healthy living and self-defense. So healthy living and self-defense have always been the vehicle towards universal harmony and spiritual wisdom, and as a way of exercising your mind. And so, and what I found is a concept that I've been learning about lately called Ikigai from Japan, Ikigai, which lines up really well. I think it's just another interesting way of saying do what you love and the money will follow. Because my healthy living and self-defense expertise fits in the category of Ikigai, which is, it's something that you love and that you're passionate about, but the world needs it and you can earn money from it. That's basically do what you love and the money will follow. And just different wording. And that's really where I am now. Somehow I've been fortunate enough to stick with healthy living and self-defense practice for over 30 years, and I'm extremely confident in my abilities not only to continue to perform because it's played out that way, but also to be able to effectively transmit or effectively communicate knowledge, which is something, another acronym I recently developed which is UDECK, UDECK, um, ubiquitous distribution of effectively communicated knowledge. And it was just something I was developing when I was thinking about, overall marketing and promotion, is that not only do you have to establish, like I have, an expertise, which I've established over 30 years, so it's knowledge, but you have to effectively communicate it. But that's not just a thing. I can effectively communicate one-on-one, but I have to get as close as I can to ubiquitous distribution of my effectively communicated knowledge in order to get it to a broader audience. And that's part of what I'm even doing right now. All of it is outlining my path and letting people know that part of the story, and also saying, yes, here I am. I am a healthy living and self-defense coach, or a healthy living and self-defense instructor, and I'm open for business, and I will continue to be, because I've realized that over all of these years, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. I am a living example of my teaching. I don't just look the part, but I can deliver, I can perform. And, realizing that I'm in a small percentage of people in my age demographic at 48 that can do the things that I can do. But also there's not a lot of people at any age that are doing backflips or 540-degree spins. So I've always been in a different category, like abnormal, above normal, beyond, above average in that way, especially when it comes to physical fitness and abilities. Which reminds me sometimes, I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate, but some people have said other things. Well, I don't need to do all that, this and that. And it reminds me something of that Arnold Schwarzenegger, that was said to him when they looked at his physique and said, oh, that's just too much, all those muscles. I don't want to ever look like that. And he says, don't worry, you never will. So it takes a lot of discipline to not only have the physique that I do, but also to be able to do the things that I do. And so, you don't have to worry about looking or being able to do any of these things if you're not willing to put in the effort. And as I know, over time, you increase your efficiency. So for me, it hardly feels like effort anymore. I know that what I'm doing is hard work, and I know that a lot of times when I feel the pain and the burn and the soreness from the various different things that I'm doing and practicing, that it is effort. But my passion for it, my love for it, overrides all of that and sees me through. And next thing you know, I'm done, and I'm glad for having done what I did that day, gotten through my exercises. But I also practice throughout the day. Throughout the day, I'm practicing various different aspects of martial arts and yoga, which to me, they're really all one thing. It's all healthy living and self-defense. There's no separation from it. Even healthy living is a form of self-defense, in being very aware of what you're putting in your body, eating as many raw foods with no additives at all if you possibly can. And that's how I eat. I'm basically a raw and whole foods enthusiast, and it's because it serves my body well, and I don't see any other reason to fall for any of these ridiculous ideas of you gotta live a little, when people want to try to encourage you to party by drinking alcohol and smoking weed and eating cake and ice cream and cookies and crackers and candies and all. It's nonsense. You're not going to get me to do that stuff, because especially now when I realize that it's so much better to live in this way, like the party, the living a little, the living more, the living a lot, the athletic longevity. My hyper athleticism is the party. That's the fun part, to be able to use my body in the way that I am and do the things that I'm able to do. It's amazing. I'm playing in a very childlike way, using my body as the toy and the playground with which to, I'm like a living video game comic book character. It's so much fun to be able to do that. Why wouldn't I want to? And I'm not willing to sacrifice my abilities for some brief, transient period of time of eating some cake or getting drunk. I mean, that's like, even though I'm an ordained minister with the Wisdom of the Heart Church, my PhD in metaphysical sciences comes from the sister organization of that church, the University of Metaphysical Sciences. I'm not religious, but I do understand a lot of things from religion that do have wisdom. And something that I learned from the Bible says that one cannot serve two masters. And, one master is this disease enters through the mouth, as the martial artist Helio Gracie, the father of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu family. And so I'm not going to serve the master of disease, which is putting all this poison in your mouth. I want to be the master of my own health. So I serve myself in that way. And so one cannot serve God and mammon. So I claim myself, my own declaration of eternal sovereignty, as my own God of my health. I'm not going to serve the mammon of disease. It doesn't make any sense. Why would I want to fight those things? I can't be one of these people who's a weekend warrior who's going to, train and compete and do things and then, celebrate by eating cake and drinking alcohol. It doesn't make sense. A lot of professional athletes and, martial artists and football players and other sports, icons, they do that stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me. To me, to be on top of my game, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I'm pretty sure, I can't prove this, and I'm willing to be wrong about it, but it feels like people like Michael Jordan, for example, also weren't people who celebrated with alcohol and things like that even when they were off season. It doesn't seem like they would be. Or people like, maybe Manny Pacquiao, or, but I don't know. It's possible that they did. But I just don't think that it's a good idea for me personally. Now, some things might work for certain people who are high-level athletes, like John Jones. Supposedly, he's been accused of doing certain things like that, and he was at the top of his game. But I don't know. For me, it doesn't work. So I'm really speaking from my personal experience, and that's what I would transmit to people. That's part of what I share with people. So, but all in all, yeah, the healthy living and self-defense is, I've realized, my forte, that all of my years of practice have given me the credentials, right? The validity, the authority, to position myself as a titan beyond world-class expert in healthy living and self-defense. So that is the offering that I have for the world. I love it. I'm passionate about it. The world needs it. And I earn money from it. It's my ikigai. I'm doing what I love. But I've amended that saying on another podcast before. I changed from doing what I love and the money will follow to I am earning money while doing what I love. Or I do what I love while earning money. Something like that, to bring it into the present. And I, as a clinical hypnotist and who's also familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, it's very important to frame things in a certain way. So definitely, I know that this is my ikigai. I am earning a living while doing what I love. I am Hakeem Ali-Bocas Alexander.